Hello and welcome to the Zach Ratliff Show. I'm Zach. I'm glad to be with you. I'm glad you're with me. And man, just thank God for another day. Thank God for another day in the greatest country he's ever put on the face of this earth, creating more freedom and opportunity than ever before in history. So thank God for it. Thank God for the opportunity. If you're the poorest of poor in our country, you're the top 1% of the world. My goal is to talk about it. What do we have to do to maintain it? What do we have to do to grow it? How do we keep our traditional Americana? How do we keep our values? So, if you're new here, uh, you know, just listen to 15 episodes. That's what I always say. 2 weeks worth, a little over, and see if we don't talk about something. Look, I don't think you're all going to agree with me, but it's something that makes you think about something different. That's the difference in conservatism and liberalism, right? We don't, well, liberalism as defined in today's culture, we don't demand you believe what we believe. We just ask that you be open to it. Anyway, before we get into it, let me thank my sponsors Mortgage Financial here in Texarkana, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org. All right, let's get into it. You know, as we see um, Donald Trump send and our government send in the National Guard to places like Washington D.C. and they're talking about going into Chicago and then even ICE going into Chicago and they're talking about going into New Orleans and Houston and all of these other things and there's some stats some statistics that I really want to read and get to and this is just the truth. It's not a fun truth. It's not a truth I'm proud of, but it goes back to the new society, the New Deal, and how our culture has been purposely eroded for the last 80 years, thereabouts, maybe 70. Okay, anyway, this is from Benny Johnson. I'm just going to read you his post. Benny Johnson on X.com. And Benny Johnson, man, he put some good stuff together. And over the years, I've gotten to where I really like what he has to say. He said, "Did you know that 1 in every 22 black men will commit murder in their lifetime?" Right off the jump. What a wild statistic. Now, Zach, what does this have to do about race? I'm going to show you, and Benny Johnson, more pointedly, is going to point out how our culture, our country, has failed inner cities and has failed all families, but especially the black family. Um, Black men make up 6% of the population. That's right after 5, right before 7. 6% of the population. However, they commit 51% of the murders in America. That is staggering. 6% of the population is responsible for over half the murders. And most of them are killing each other, right? Black on black crime is horrible. Black men are 9 times more likely to commit a violent crime than the general population in the U.S. So then Benny Johnson goes on to say, this is horrific. How did we get there? And then here it is. One glaring data point shows a catastrophic cultural difference between black men and the rest of American population. And here it is. Fatherlessness. There's no father, which if you go back to the 45 points of the Communist Plan as read into the record January 10th, 63 or 65, the tearing down the American family was the goal. That because the commies knew and know, because I mean you can look at culture, right? You can look at everything that culture does. They knew that without a doubt, if you took away the father, if you broke the family, this country would fall. So anyway, we'll get back to this article by Benny Johnson on X.com. Fatherlessness. Nearly 70% of black babies are born without present fathers. 64% of black children are raised without a single parent. What a shame. What a shame. And what a shame that we as people, look, I'm not black. I've got a lot of black friends, but I'm not black. I don't, if you're watching, you can tell. However, why have we allowed this? Oh, that's just normal. That's just black culture. Well, why? Why? Why is that okay? Well, you break the family, you take Jesus out of the common discourse, and everything becomes okay. So 64% of black children are raised by a single parent. There are 9.5 million black children under the 18 and roughly in the US, and roughly 6.1 million live in fatherless households. Um, that's two-thirds. That's hard to do. And look, I'll stick to this, and I've said it since I heard it, whatever point. A woman cannot raise a man, she can only raise a boy. Now, for any women that are listening that don't agree, I'm sorry. But there's got to be male influence to get a man to emerge. Kids without fathers are far more likely to live in poverty, have half as likely to graduate college. Now, these are all Benny Johnson's words. I'm just agreeing with them. Half as likely to graduate college, twice as likely to end up in prison. All because you don't have a dad present, right? We've all got a dad, but we've all got a sperm donor, maybe I should say. 70% of juveniles in state facilities come from single parent households, no matter the race. 70% of juveniles in state facilities come from single parent households. Like I said when Paul Yeldell was in here not too long ago, the devil doesn't have to have you believe in him. He just has to have you believe that there aren't morals, that there is no Jesus, and then everything else is okay. It doesn't matter if you're a single parent raising a kid. You can go do what you want to do. Live your truth. Be who you want to be. Nobody's going to steal your joy. Thank God. You know what? Thank you, Dad. Thank you for being a man for me. Thank you to my stepdad. Thank you to my daughter's stepdad. Thank all of you men out there who feel like you're marginalized and made fun of in every movie, TV show, commercial, whatever it is. You're told that you're too masculine. You're too masculine. That's why you don't like whatever the culture is pushing on you. Put your chest out, put your shoulders back. Stand up and be proud. It's not fun to be a man, but that's what God demands of us. Don't feel sorry for me because I'm a man. Nobody's felt sorry for me yet, but we can go get it done. Put on the armor of Christ and move forward. That's what we have to do. Well, let's get into this. How does this tie into our culture? Going back to Benny Johnson's article on X, there is your fatherlessness to criminal prison pipeline we just went through that. How does this happen? He says prior to the Great Society welfare programs. Oh, I was off on my time and say 40, 60 years. Prior to the Great Society welfare programs of the 60s, only 9% of American children were raised without fathers. But we brought in the Great Society. We're going to make everything good. Everything's acceptable. By 1970, 30% of black children were growing up fatherless. By 2021, that number had skyrocketed to over 60%. Look, it's not often that I read an entire article, but this hits home so hard that we have to talk about it. We can't just continue to let the media lie to us about how we're haters and we just don't understand. We do understand because we can read, we can see the facts. Then Benny Johnson goes on to say federal welfare policies and government incentives systematically encourage single parent households. As someone who manages multiple units and apartments and different things, you can see that. I can see that every day. I can go to any of these properties and watch this happen. This is a crisis that's real and growing. I agree with you, Benny Johnson. If y'all haven't had a chance to follow him on X, go do that. Obviously, I don't know him. I'm not getting paid to talk about his stuff, but it's dead on. And it's a hard truth that we all need to talk about. Our culture attacks fathers. And I think I've got some articles in here talking about how it also attacks Christianity, right? You can't be cool and be a Christian because you're a Bible thumper or you're a Jesus person or you're this or you're that. How dare you pray in public? That's what we have to do. Speaking of being Christians being the most made fun of group in the U.S., it's from Wall Street Apes on X.com. Charlie Kirk says the left, meaning the left side of the left, will use Islam to bring down America. The spiritual battle is coming to the West, and the enemies are wokeism or Marxism combining with Islamism to go after what they call the American way of life. That's exactly right. But here's what the woke doesn't understand. Once once they're used up, once the ideology is through with them, they're the first to go. You can't go over with your woke Palestine LGBT movement to actual Palestine because they will kill you. That's the culture. That's the way it is. So then going on from there, Marie Le Pen speaking up after the fall of the collapse of the Macron government, and thanks to my dad for pointing this part out. Shout out J.D. Vance who put all this into motion to have the government collapse on Macron. France will take this Marie Le Pen from Vivid on X.com. Vivid prowess. France will take all necessary steps. Radical mosque will be closed. Hate preachers will be expelled. Salafism and the Muslim Brotherhood will be liquidated. I can't, and then it goes on to say, I can't wait to see her replace Macron. I can't either. As a person who's been to France a couple of times, and I like the culture there, I've always enjoyed it. I want to see France prosper. But right now, with the Muslim invasion, it is not. But we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to offend anybody unless they're Christian or they're a dad or they're a man. Then it's free game, baby. And that's okay. But it's time to talk about it. Ephesians 6, we go with boldness with the sword of truth. And it doesn't say we go with fun. We go with pageantry. It doesn't say everything is rainbows and sunshine on this side. We walk with boldness in the armor of Christ. Look, you can go back to, they talk about the Christian Crusades and and how it was a response to 400 years of a Muslim invasion. It's what's happening again. The Christian Crusades were a response to Muslim invasion. Because that's what the religion teaches. You're allowed to lie to the infidel in order to get in and gain control. And then once you are, then you knock them down with Sharia law. And either they convert or they die or they're your slave. Let's go on. And look, this wasn't really where the show was intended to go, but there are just so many articles on it that I've seen in the last few days and weeks. And look, there's a lot of times where I just haven't talked about it because because of the obvious reasons. However, here we are. This is from One Life It Is on X.com. 3 phases of Muslim immigration. Phase 1, few in number, oppressed Islam. Play the victim. Claim Islamophobia. More tolerant of others. Phase 2, when you're the large minority. You're an indignant with Islam. You're threatening. You demand Sharia law. You call everybody intolerant infidels. Phase 3, once you have a clear majority, dominant Islam. You're militant. You have strict Sharia law. You kill and subdue all infidels. Then it goes on to say, for 1,400 years, this pattern has not changed. Moderates are irrelevant. That's absolutely right. I'm not saying you all don't know some moderate Muslims, because there are some. I know some. I'm saying they're the outliers. So, all right, we're going to get off that for a little bit. All right, Eric Doherty on X.com. President Trump just had HUD Secretary Scott Turner on stage, and he said this. Think about this. What if 1 million people prayed for our country every single week between now and the next 4th of July? What if believers all across our great nation got together with 10 people each week to pray for our country and our fellow citizens? 1 million people every single week. Think about the miracles that would take place over the next year. Think about the transformation you and I could witness. Then he goes on to say families coming back together, health being restored, financial needs being met, mountains being moved. Think about it. If 1 million of us every week got together, how many know that God is well and able to do it? That's coming from press conference with the HUD secretary. And it says, and he, so I think Scott Turner said all this. It's quoted, and I just couldn't tell if it was quoting Trump or Scott Turner. I think it's Scott Turner asking for us to pray, for us to go to our God and say, our God, the Alpha, the Omega, the truth. And he's asking for us to go to him and plead for every week. God, please save us. Bring back our health. Bring back our country. Don't end us yet. Be with us financially. Be with us spiritually. That's what he's asking us to do. What a great move. It's like the prayer chain if you're involved in a church. When something bad happens, you say, "Oh, I'm going to reach out to the prayer chain." You can see changes in people when 5 or 6 or 1 pray for. Much less if you had 1 million people that also reached out to 10 people. So, however, do the math on that. We can change this country back to what it was, back to a nation founded on, hey, we're gonna follow God. We're gonna believe in Jesus. And whatever you say, if you don't believe that, that's fine. Just go read history. It's definitely there. All right, let's go on to the next one. Oh yeah, here's this from Nick Sorter, X.com. He's got some good articles. President Trump. There is a tremendous anti-Christian bias. You hear about anti-Semitic, but you don't hear about anti-Christian. He says, we are ending that rapidly. Christianity is by far, and then this is just part of the article. Christianity is by far the most persecuted religion on earth. Luckily, so far in our country, we haven't had to experience that here. But in our church, they'll bring in these pastors and missionaries from around the world that our church supports. And the stories that you hear, one guy had his fingernails and toenails pulled out. And the problems that they have and the threats to their families. And we have it good here. We have it so good here, we don't know we're under attack. We have it so good here, we don't understand that our religion is hated by the entire world. However, statistically, there's more Christians than any other religion in the world. Islam is next. That's exactly, but we've got a president talking about this. How great is that? Let's get back to reality. And like I've been saying every day for a couple of weeks, the farther we get from God and our culture, the worse it gets. But going back is tough, right? It's like losing weight. It's easy to get fat. Going back the other way is hard. And trust me. But you can do it. You just have to want to. You have to try to. It has to be an effort every single day. And that's what it's going to be like turning this country around. Okay, we want it. Well, do you want it? And then, but you don't do anything about it? You all know the saying, one thing in one hand, one in another, see what fills up first. Here's a cool article. I think it's cool. My show, so I'm going to say it. It's from Project Constitution, but it's showing Fox News as well. Breaking. This is from X.com. President Trump declares Mexican drug cartels are terrorist organizations and orders the U.S. military to prepare for drone strikes. Wow. Which I've long said our policy for Mexico and illegal immigration, it should be a simple one. Hey, just call their president. If you don't end the immigration and the drugs coming into our country, we're going to take Acapulco. We're going to take the peninsula that has Cancun and Cozumel and all that. We're going to make them U.S. territories. And then we're going to come with napalm and we're going to napalm every weed filled marijuana patch that you have in that country. And then we're going to send in certain units and we're going to take all your oil fields and we're going to call it American Resources, United States Resources. Now, I know that's extreme. And also, we're not going to allow money transfers from the United States. It'd be back to the 1500s pretty quick around there. We, our government, us as a voting populace, have allowed our politicians to ignore it for so long. It's easily fixed. Just like a lot of the stuff Trump's doing. Oh, you can't do that. And then he goes in there. There were the reports, oh, you can't just flip a switch. And then he flipped a switch and it actually happened. Anyway, I know some of my views are extreme, and that's okay. Sometimes you at least have to think about it. Let's see what this is from another one from Eric Daugherty. The White House reveals President Trump had 21 victories at the U.S. Supreme Court, including the two of which were yesterday. So, and the White House put this out. Nationwide injunctions. Here are the victories from the Supreme Court. Transgender military ban. Third country removals number 1. Third country removals number 2. Ending federal DEI funding. The Department of Education RIFs. Multi-agency RIFs. I don't know that acronym, so I can't help you on. Alien Enemies Act habeas. Abrego Garcia. Terminating probationary employees. Terminating high-ranking executive officials. Revoking TPS for Venezuelan migrants. I don't remember what TPS is either. Unless you're on watching Office Space and it's the TPS reports. Okay. Terminating high-ranking executive officials. Revoking parole status for CHNV migrants. Social Security data access. Rejecting intrusive discovery. Terminating some commissioner. National Institute of Health funding. Immigration enforcement in Los Angeles. All of those are victories that Trump has had in the Constitution, but not just Trump, the American Constitution. Right? That's what's important. So, yeah, let's move on. It's from Laura Loomer. If you're not following her on X, you need to be, or have not listened to the show, and I'll quote her quite often. It is time to recognize, it says the U.S. can no longer trust the U.K. It is time to recognize that the so-called special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. has come to an end. We must stop sharing intelligence with the U.K. via the Five Eyes intel relationship, MI5, MI6, MI7, and all that. Is what we get from the UK worth what we'll be giving to the jihadis now? UK's traitor and in chief, Keir Starmer, has just appointed the Islamic terrorist supporter as UK Home Secretary. So basically, a lady who supports different terrorist organizations is now the head of the MI5 and security in the UK. Well, we share a lot of our intelligence with them. So the thought is, if she knows about some of our operations that are going to happen, it's going to cost American lives. So now we're at a point, can we trust the UK government when they have someone who admittedly supports people that we don't? Can we trust them with our intelligence? And I would say no. And so does Laura Loomer. Thanks for the article, Laura Loomer. And this is about um, the French collapse. I mean, that's just great. Once again, then NBCnews.com, Supreme Court allows Trump to fire an FTC commissioner. That's exactly right. But here's the biggest deal I think is coming. If you're seeing what's happening at the Hyundai plant, if you're seeing what's happening with a lot of these um, companies that are using um, Indian workers, this is from Substack, DC Drano on Substack. Trump is bringing the hammer down on India. He might block all American IT companies from outsourcing their work to Indian companies. This would cost them millions of jobs. Good. Because our trade deals have been with India have been rigged for a long time. It's time to, yeah. So there's millions of American jobs going to India. Trump's thinking about ending it all, which is what we need. We have to focus on our country. It's like when you're flying somewhere and the flight attendant stands up. It's like, hey, I used to be able to do it by memory, the whole speech, but I can't. I hadn't flown enough recently to do it. But hey, you know, in the event of decompression or whatever, the bags will fall out. At one point, and in the Saab 340B prop plane that went from Texarkana to Dallas for years, you had to actually hook the oxygen into the tank, and then the thing is, then put your mask on, secure it tightly, pull the tabs. The bag will not inflate, right? That's what they always say. Once the oxygen is flowing, then help the person next to you. Don't do it first because you'll pass out and you won't be able to help anybody, and then they'll pass out too. Well, that's why we can help the rest of the world. But we have to take care of home base first. We have to protect the home front first. So, anyway, there you go. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for the ever growing uh, viewer and listener base that we have. I hope God blesses each and every one of you, and we'll be back and do it again tomorrow.